Hello, my name is Keshwani. That's Keshwani, Keshwani. We are here because we want to prepare for SAT. We have been solving SAT math problems out of this book here, the official SAT study guide. If you do not own this book already, purchase one immediately. You're going to need it. The problem that we are about to solve is the one that you will find on page number 457. Page 457, today is our lesson number 20, day number 20. Let's take a look at it. We are told that a right circular cylinder with a diameter d and a height of h is given to us here. So here's our cylinder. We are told the diameter is d and the height is h. Of the following expressions, which represents the volume of the smallest possible rectangular box? We're looking for not just any old rectangular box, but the smallest possible rectangular box that we can find that will completely contain the cylinder, that can completely accommodate our cylinder. In other words, the cylinder cannot stick out, nor can the cylinder go in so much so that we have extra space on the top. It has to be perfectly level, because we want the smallest possible rectangular box. Let's see what we can do here. The rectangular box that we're talking about, first of all, because of the fact it has a diameter of d, it has to have, on the top, an opening of a square of side d. It has to have an opening of side d. This distance here has to be d. It doesn't look like a square, does it? This distance has to be d so that it can accommodate our cylinder, which has a d diameter. This is d, and so is this. So this thing is d, and this thing is d. So that's the opening of the cylinder, opening of our rectangular box as you look at it from the top. This is our rectangular box here, and our cylinder is sitting inside it. Now, how deep does this box needs to be? Well, this box needs to be deep enough to accommodate the cylinder, which has a height of h. So our cylinder that we're looking for looks something like this. Or rather, our rectangular box that we're looking for looks something like this. It has a height of h. This height here, from here to here. It has a height of h, same as this guy right here. And this distance here is d, and this distance here is d. In other words, on the top it's a square. The opening is a square, and the volume of this box is going to be length times width times height. But the length and the width of this rectangular box is simply the length of the diameter. So it's diameter times the height, diameter squared times the h. Very good. That's our minimum rectangular box that we can find that will be able to contain our cylinder. Let's do the next one, shall we? That was a level 4 question actually. It was nasty. Number 19 is equally nasty, but don't worry, don't fret too much, don't worry too much. Number 20 is going to get nastier. So look on the bright side, at least this is nasty, not nastier. Let's do number 19. Number 19 is a tricky one. We are told that the square of x, we are told, is equal to 4 times the square of y. 4 times the square of y. Now what do you gather from that? That's the first part. That is the most important step here, as to what do you gather from it. What we should gather is that, what this tells us is that x must either equal a positive 2i or x must equal a negative 2i. Why? Because in either scenario, if x equals negative 2i, if you square this side, you get 4y squared, and if you square this side, x squared. X squared equals 4y squared. x squared equals 4y squared. You see, x equals either a negative 2y or a positive 2y. Stay with me in the story. That's the first part. That was the biggest hurdle that most people will have trouble getting over. Now the second part. It says, if x is 1 more than twice y, x is 1 more than twice y. Very good, that's our second equation. So all we have to do now, let's erase this part, we don't need this bottom part here. All we have to do now is to realize that here they're telling us x equals 2y, here they're telling us x equals that quantity. Because this quantity equals x and this quantity equals x, that implies that 1 plus 2y must equal 2y. Now I said must equal, which was nonsensical, because no number can equal to itself plus a 1. It says 2y equals 2y, which is itself, plus a 1, which is nonsensical. It's not going to happen. This is this scenario that we're looking at. This is not a realistic scenario. So here x equals negative 2y, so, and here x equals 1 plus 2y. So that tells us that negative 2y must equal 1 plus 2y. Bring the 2y to this side and we'll end up with negative 4y equals 1, which tells us y equals negative 1 quarter. But we're not interested in y. The question is asking how much is x. Is negative 1 quarter one of the answer choice? You see, it's for those people who are not paying attention. If you stop right here, you're going to end up picking answer choice C. They're not asking for the value of y. They're asking us what's the value of x. So we have to go further. And x we know, right here, x we know equals 1 plus 2 times y. 2 times a quarter is half, 2 quarters are half, and it's got a negative sign in front of it, so it's negative half. So it's 1 minus a half, which means x equals half. X equals half. That's it, that's your answer. The answer is E. Answer is E. This was one way of doing the problem. There is another way of doing the problem. If you're interested, we can do that way too. There is a second method. I'll give you a chance actually in case you want to pause this thing. Here's a second method if you're interested. We know that x squared equals 4y squared. We are also told in the second equation, in the second sentence, they tell us that x equals 1 more than 2 times y. How do they put it? X is 1 more than twice y. There you go. You see right here. If you were to square both sides here, we'll end up with x squared equals to 1 plus 2y squared, which is exactly, I don't know why I had to rewrite it. And that's also x squared, which means this quantity must equal that quantity. We can put it right here. That implies that 4y squared must equal 1 plus 2y whole squared. Open it up and you get 1 plus 4y plus 4y squared. Now the reason why I'm not explaining every excruciating detail here, every single step here, is because I'm assuming that if you are attempting to do the very last problem or the second last problem, the penultimate problem, if you're attempting to do the penultimate problem on the exam, that you do have some knowledge of algebra, that you do understand how I went from here to here. Alright? So here we have 4y squared, here we have 4y squared, it drops out, and we end up with the exact same thing as before. We find that 4y equals negative 1, which means y equals negative 1 quarter. And y equals negative 1 quarter, we do the same exact procedure as before, we find the x. That's all. Let's learn this word. I used this word here just now. I said first I said we are at the very last problem, and then I realized that we were not at the last problem. This is problem number 19. This is not the last problem, this is the penultimate problem. Let me rewrite this thing right here. Penultimate. What does it mean, penultimate? Penultimate is just a very fancy way of saying, second to the last. Number 19, obviously, it's not the last problem. It is the second last problem. It is the penultimate problem. I'm trying to see in my vocabulary list here as to when we learned it, in case you're curious, in case you want to learn it properly. Day number 11. just type in vocabulary, day 11. Just type in vocabulary day 11 along with my name. It will pop right up. Watch the video. You will learn the word penultimate along with some other useful and good words to help you expand your vocabulary for the SAT. Okay? Let's do the last one. Enough said. Number 20. Number 20, before I do this problem, I want you to watch this video if you have not watched already. I would like you to watch day 7, which is problem number 6 on page 415. If you have not watched day number 6, don't continue watching this thing. I'm not going to explain everything that goes on here, because otherwise if I start explaining every single thing every single time it appears in the exam, we'll never get anywhere. What we need to understand here is that when two lines are perpendicular to each other, let's call it L1 and L2, when two lines are perpendicular to each other, the product of their slope equals -1. M1 and M2, letter M is traditionally used to represent the slope of the line. So M1 times M2 equals -1. And as I said, if you want to understand this thing in detail, properly, watch the video first. First of all, I do not know what business you would have watching day number 20 when you have not watched day 7. Go in sequence. Make sure you do every single problem. Do you understand? Don't skip around. So, when two lines are perpendicular to each other, the product of their slope is -1. Here we are told that we have line M, or rather line L, that goes through, line L goes through 0, 0 and 2, 1. It says if L contains 0, 0 and 2, 1, alright, so therefore that tells us that the slope of line L must be the change in y, 1 minus 0, 1 minus 0, y2 minus y1, and x2 minus x1, 2 minus 0, is just half. That's the slope of line M, line L. Then they go on to tell us, then they go on to tell us that the line Q contains, line Q goes through 2, 1 and 0t. Again, same thing. The slope of line Q, I was going to say line T, it's not line T, it's line Q. Slope of line T is going to be again change in y over the change in x, which is t minus 1 over 0 minus 2, which boils down to t minus 1 over -2, which is same as 1 minus t over 2. Or if you want to leave it like this, that's fine too. That's it, we're almost there. Now, the product of this guy and this guy has to be -1. And that's how we're going to find the t. Let's do it here. So the product of this slope, which is slope of line L, which is half, times the slope of line Q, which we just found out is t minus 1 over -2, has to equal -1. Watch what happens. Watch what happens. On the top we just get t minus 1, and on the bottom we're going to get, positive 2 times a -2, which is going to give us -4, equals -1. Multiply both sides of the equation by -4, so that we can get rid of this -4 with this -4, and we end up with t minus 1 equals -4 times -1, and -4 times a -1 is going to give us positive 4. Add 1 to both sides, and we end up with t equals 5. Voila! We finally arrived. These are very nasty problems, I tell you. I do not know how they expect kids to manage this thing in 1 minute or 2 minutes. This was not a fun one. I hope you got something out of it. I will see you tomorrow, where we'll begin the next section in the exam. As I explained to you several times already, we do one section, each exam, I'm going to explain one more time, each exam in this book, there are 10 exams. There are 10 exams, let me put it here. There are 10 exams, each exam has 3 sections of math, each exam has 3 math sections, and each section is taking me 5 days. It takes 5 videos to cover each section, which means we do each exam in 15 days. Today is our day number 20. That tells me that we were on the 4th section. 4th section must be the very first section in the second exam. Today we'll do the second section of the second exam. And that's the goal. We're going to do a few at a time, and eventually we'll get to our destination, which is the very last question of the very last exam, exam number 10. Alright? I'll see you tomorrow. Bye now.